Winter has arrived in Michigan again. And with winter comes cold weather and usually snow and ice, all of which we have right now. And there are certain things that every Tesla owner should know about operating their vehicle when it's cold and they have winter conditions. In fact, these are things can benefit really all EV owners. And in this video, I'm going to tell you what those key things are. Hey there, welcome back to Am I Tesla Guy? Thank you so much for coming back for another video. Like I mentioned, we are in winter conditions here in Michigan. So first we got to talk about what do I mean by winter conditions? I mean cold and sometimes snowy, sometimes icy. So in this video, I am going to give you my top 3 tips for operating your Tesla in winter conditions. Tip number 1. Preheating or preconditioning your vehicle. That is preheating that affects your day-to-day driving, maybe a commute, maybe you just going places on the weekend, and then preheating or preconditioning that affects a road trip. So let's start with the day-to-day. If you have operated in cold weather with your Tesla, may have seen what I affectionately call the dreaded blue snowflake. This is something that will show up in the app, and it is something that will show up in the software in your car. If you see the blue snowflake, you are also likely to see like a green lightning bolt with part of a circle around it that is solid and part of it is dashed. I'm going to talk about that one in a little bit. You don't always have to have the blue snowflake to have the green, let's just call it the green lightning bolt. Let's just agree to call it that, okay? So in a day-to-day basis, that dreaded blue snowflake is letting you know that your battery is cold. Now, what that means is you've got inflow and you've got outflow. Now, in a Tesla, what's really fun? The outflow, of course. It's that instant torque we're all used to. And it will affect that a little bit. I don't really notice it in my day-to-day driving. We have a 2020 Model 3 Standard Range Plus, now what they would call the rear-wheel drive, and we have a 2022 Model Y Performance. And neither of them do I really notice it in day-to-day driving. However, the inflow is quite important, and that is mainly from a charging and a regenerative braking standpoint. When a battery is cold, it cannot accept energy at the same rate as it can when it is warm. That is why you will actually see sometimes what I call the strips of bacon. When you do your heat seaters, you may actually see a similar icon by your car in the app in particular, and those 3 strips of bacon are actually orange, not red. That is letting you know that it is heating up your battery. And that's part of the battery management system. It's doing that so they can get better performance out of the battery. As far as charge limitations because of a cold battery, my understanding is that is not going to affect your charging at home all that much, whether that be in a standard outlet or we've got 250 amp outlets and we run our chargers through there, or if you have the high power wall connector. My understanding, you can correct me in the comments down below if I have this wrong, is that even the cold battery, you're still going to be able to hit, for the most part, the highest rate of those various charging options. Where you will definitely see it is when you're charging on a road trip. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And I alluded to the other inflow, which is regenerative braking. This is really where you're going to see it. And the clue you will get to whether your regenerative braking is limited is you will see what I have called earlier the green lightning bolt with a circle around it, and part of that circle is solid green and then part of it is dashes. That just means that your regenerative braking is limited. So if you happen to see that symbol I'm talking about and you tap on it, it will actually tell you that your regenerative braking is limited. This is important to know because if you are used to driving with regenerative braking, which I love, you're going to have to become friends with your brake pedal again because if your battery is really cold, it can be to the point where it's going to feel like you actually have no regen, which is a similar feeling to if you've ever charged your car to 100%. Just keep that in mind. Don't be coming into a stop sign and think you're just going to one pedal drive that sucker right to the stop. Chances are you're going to have to use your brake pedal. That's where the preheating and preconditioning comes in. There are options within the Tesla app or in the software itself in the car where you can set it up to preheat prior to departure. You can set it up to preheat or precondition at a certain time. I very much recommend doing that. That's something we have set up on both of our vehicles. I don't know that there's a magic time frame. I tend to do it for at least 15 minutes, somewhere between 15 and 25 minutes before we leave. And I noticed that that seems to do a pretty good job. Now, this is something we actually do when we're out throughout the day. If you have not already seen my video on what I consider to be the most underrated Tesla feature, I will link to that up here and down in the video description below. If we're, say, going to parent-teacher conferences, or we're going to church, or even I'm at work and I'm getting ready to leave, I will usually turn the climate on in my car somewhere between 15 to 20 minutes before I head home, assuming I remember, and I do most of the time. And the reason for that is, first off, it gets the cabin warm and it's nice and comfortable. And the other reason is it starts to heat up the battery again. So there's a theme here. Now, the other context of that would be if you are going on a road trip. This is probably the bigger deal. If you're going on a road trip, you probably don't want to stay in charge any longer than you have to. Well, if your battery is cold, it is going to charge at a slower rate. And because Tesla superchargers are DC fast chargers, you want to get in there and you want to charge as fast as you can. They need the battery to be conditioned and ready to go. What I recommend with that is, when you are going on a road trip, put your destination in there. It will pick your superchargers for you. The reason that is so important is because your Tesla's computer is super smart and is going to start preconditioning that battery so that it can accept a higher rate of charge. I think my record so far is I've actually had it where it started preconditioning 40 minutes before we were going to get to the supercharger. Clearly not an exact science, but I have also arrived at a supercharger one time where I forgot to put it in as the destination, and I did actually get a message that said it was warming the battery so it could accept a faster charge. So make sure that you put in your destination. I say put it in there all the time, but in particular, you need to do that in the winter or you're very much going to affect your charging rate when you get to the supercharger. Okay, and we are going to go on to tip number 2, braking and acceleration management. What on earth do I mean? Well, I alluded to one of them earlier, regenerative braking, how if the battery is cold, that will be limited. Now, some people who believe that it's actually better if the regenerative braking is not very strong in the winter and they can control the braking better with their brake pedal. I can understand that. So like I mentioned, we have got a 2020 Model 3 Standard Range Plus, and in that car, for acceleration, it has chill and standard. And then in our Model Y, I am pretty sure it has chill, standard, and then sport, because it is a performance model. Now, in the winter, it is not uncommon, especially when we're talking from the standpoint of driving conditions. Maybe it's snowy, icy. There's not much you can do on ice. Let's just be honest. Well, let's just say it's snowy. I do actually tend to go with the chill setting. Traction control on Teslas is unbelievable. In fact, it makes it hard to have fun if you're in an empty, snowy parking lot. It will cut that power to those rear wheels in this rear-wheel drive car pretty quickly, and it's hard to get the back end to whip around, but I digress. So I do actually tend to put it on chill for acceleration in both of our cars when there's snowy conditions out there, because there's really no point in having it on standard or on sport, because you're not going to go faster. It's just not going to happen. So I do think that's a good idea. The other thing is with the regenerative braking in some of the older Teslas, 2020's like 3 years ago. It's not really that old. But what's interesting is some models you can actually change the regenerative braking level, and some you cannot. So in our Model 3, we have standard and low for regenerative braking. In my Model Y, I do not have a choice on regenerative braking. It is always the same thing. So for those of you who do have the choice and you feel that having that lower level of regenerative braking would be beneficial from a driving standpoint for you, then you can actually change that and just set it to low. And then you'll be using your brake pedal more. Little bonus tip here. If you are going to, in effect, have kind of a chill setup for winter driving, what I recommend is create a new profile for yourself in your car and have all the settings the same. Just create a one. I have one called Mike, and then I just have chill in parentheses, and it's the same as my standard profile. However, what I've done is I've gone in and I've set the regenerative braking to low and the acceleration to chill in the Model 3. In the Model Y, I can't change the regenerative braking, so I have just set the acceleration to chill. But I can just go into the profile and pick the chill profile, and then I'm good to go. If that's something you'd be curious in seeing a video on how to do that, because I use profiles for a lot of things, let me know in the comments down below. I'm happy to make one to kind of share that strategy with you. For those of you whose car does not have an option on the regenerative braking to decrease it, like with our Model Y, just keep in mind that that's the case. I mean, if your battery's cold and your regenerative braking is limited for that reason, you're gonna kind of get that effect, but I still would recommend preconditioning and preheating the car. I think the benefits far outweigh the detriments on that. But you just wanna remember that, because I've tried it a couple times just to see what it was like, where I was going along and it was snowy and it was a little bit slippery, and I just let off the accelerator and the regen was pretty strong, and it did. The back of my car kind of whipped out a little bit. Now, it wasn't dangerous or anything like that. Like I said, the traction control on these vehicles is absolutely mind-blowing, but at the same time, it can make your heart beat a little bit faster if you're not ready for it. It's all about not making any quick moves, right? I mean, that's kind of a general winter driving tip, I think, no matter what the vehicle is. Smooth and easy, and you will be fine. All right, tip number 3, and that is understanding efficiency. I think it's always important to understand efficiency, and what I mean by that, how much energy you're using, how far can you go using the information your car is giving you about both of those items to plan out a trip or know whether you're going to make it to a charger or not. For a general overview of efficiency, I did do a video on that. I'll link to it up here and I'll put it in the description down below. I do recommend going and checking that out. That is not specific to winter, but the overall discussion that I do in that video, I think will be very helpful if you're watching this video. But efficiency, I am going to go as far as to say, is it is more important in the winter. And the colder it gets, the more important it is to keep on top of it. Now, what do I mean when I mean cold? I keep using this word cold. I'm defining it based on where I start to see some of these things I'm talking about popping up their head. Maybe the dreaded blue snowflake or the limited regen, the cold battery, the limited charge rates. I'm gonna say somewhere in the low to mid 30 degrees Fahrenheit and below. I really don't see it when we're up into the 40 degree Fahrenheit range and above. If you do, let me know in the comments down below. I just tend to not see it. It is almost kind of exponential at the colder it gets. We had some days this past week where the high temperature was like 7 degrees Fahrenheit or 9 degrees Fahrenheit. You had wind chills that were in the double digits below zero. Now, what I mean by efficiency is how much energy does your car use to go a given distance. Typically in a Tesla, you're going to see that as watt hours per mile. In our Model 3 Standard Range Plus, in a typical road trip, we're probably getting a mixed efficiency of maybe 250 watt hours per mile-ish. Okay, give or take 25 watt hours per mile. And in our Model Y Performance, we tend to be more around 300 watt hours per mile. But let me tell you, when winter comes and you get those cold temperatures, it changes drastically. Let me just take the Model Y Performance because that's our road trip vehicle. That's the one where I'm following the efficiency the most because it's the car I drive. The best example I can give you is this past week, because I was having kind of a Twitter back and forth comparison, actually with a local friend here, Cybertruck guy. I will link to his Twitter in the description down below. Super, super nice guy. And we were kind of talking about winter efficiency. I was watching throughout the day, and when I woke up in the morning, it was 7 degrees Fahrenheit. And by the end of the day, it was 15 degrees Fahrenheit. For that day, my efficiency was 425 watt hours per mile. When you see people saying, oh man, you can't have an electric vehicle, you can't have a Tesla in the winter, you can't go anywhere, it kills your range and everything. I wouldn't say it kills your range, but I think you need to be aware of what it does, and it can be pretty significant. If the temperature's in the low 30s, you know, maybe my efficiency hit is only like 15-20%. But on a day like it was this past week, you're looking at more 35 to 40% hit. And it didn't really affect my day. I was able to go everywhere I wanted to go and do everything I wanted to do. But if I were on a road trip in particular, you just need to know ahead of time, you're going to be charging more often. Just plan that into the trip. And again, that's another reason to be preconditioning and putting in your destination so it can precondition before it gets as a supercharger so you can get the better rate. Keep your eye on efficiency. Know that you're going to get a hit. Remember the earlier tips, particularly tip 1 about preconditioning and things like that. And just keep it in mind when you're setting how much your car is going to charge overnight or Maybe you don't charge overnight, maybe you don't have access to that. Just keep it in mind when you're thinking about how high you are going to charge the battery to make sure you can get to a destination or use it throughout the day. So those are my top 3 tips for winter driving in your Tesla. Now, there are many, many other considerations when it comes to winter and a Tesla or another EV. I would love it if you would share your number 1 tip. If you have a number 1 tip that is not something I mentioned, or you want to elaborate on something that I did mention, please drop it in the comments down below. Let's all learn from this video. If you're not already subscribed, please consider subscribing. It would be great to have you back for each new video. And if you did get some value out of this video, please throw me a thumbs up down there, hit the like button, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. And then in our Model Y Performance, oh, sorry about that. That'll probably be a blooper reel. We'll put that in the bloopers, won't we? Okay. I'm sorry, you fell. You fell. I'm sorry. Are you feeling okay up there? Feeling okay. Okay.